So in today's first reading, we have the testimony of Eleazar to the faith that he professed. And we are told that he was one of the foremost teachers of the law, advanced in years. A man who was deeply rooted in his faith. And of course, we know that at that point of time, the Greeks have taken over, and people like Antiochus Epiphanes try to impose a common religion for everyone in those countries that they controlled, so that it would be easier to manage them. And this was always the case. In those days, unity in a country has a lot to do with religion and culture. Same culture, same religion. And so they were told to worship the emperor so that he would have authority over them. And in order to make them break away from their Jewish faith, the king demanded that they destroy the book of the law so that they would not rely on it. And instead of worshiping God in the temple, they should worship him. And of course, to take the pork, the pig's flesh. And here Eleazar, he was conscious of his responsibility as a teacher of the law to be faithful to what he believed in. And because he refused to cooperate with the authorities, and he refused to consume pork as was demanded by the authorities, he was to be put to death. And he himself, he showed that he had no fear. In fact, he willingly went to the chopping board to be executed. But then we see there were good friends of his, people who knew him, and people who would have apostatized, certainly. Those who were in charge of the banquet were those who have been apostatized from their faith in order to save their skin, in order to save their life. They obeyed the king's command. And so they told him, perhaps this would be a way to save your life. You just have to compromise. And how do you compromise? You just have to pretend that eating the meat of the pig, the flesh of the pig, by pretending to consume it. Actually, you prepare your own food, and in the eyes of others, they will not know. So, in this way, you would not have committed a sin because you did not eat pig's flesh. At the same time, you will save your life, and everything would be over. But you look at how Eleazar said, he was conscious, although it seems to be a good thing to save his life at all cost. But for him, faith has no price to be paid. You cannot buy his faith. So he said, if I were to do that, then I would have what we call cause a scandal and a bad example to the young people. That even Eleazar, who professed so much his faith in the God of Israel, that he, after 90 years of service, eventually would deny his faith, which would send a wrong signal to those young people who would watch him in committing that act, in surrendering his faith. And so Eleazar refused even to simulate this action. And I think this is the greatest temptation today for us. Especially we are living in a world where inclusivity is emphasized, that all of us must behave like everyone else. We are not encouraged today to reject our identity, as Christians particularly, because of inclusivity. Everybody should be the same. And religions today, you're supposed to keep it within the church, within the temple, and not be announced in public. And so today, even many Catholics are afraid to profess their faith publicly for fear that they would be seen as a disturbance of peace, and for trying to conduct ourselves differently from the rest of the world. And the world will not accept us if we are different. We must be exactly like them. And so this is what is happening today. The real danger is that we are called to simulate sin, even if we do not really believe in what the world is telling us. Today, young people, they are under great challenge from their peers. And we know young people particularly, they are so desperate for friendship. They are so desperate for acceptance by their friends. And they don't want to be ostracized because they are afraid of loneliness. They are afraid of being left alone. And so what do? Again, so those who have really faith, but they are weak in their faith, they are afraid to say that they are Catholics, that they cannot do certain things. And so they succumb to their friend's invitation to do certain things that are against the Bible, against the teaching of Christ. Although deep in their hearts, they know they should not do it. And they don't even agree with them. These are the good, so-called, they're really good Catholics, but they lack courage. And so what do? In order to be included among the friends, they sleep around. Because if you don't sleep around, means to say you are narrow-minded. You are not exposed to the world. You do not know what is life. And so they don't want to feel the odd one out. So they also sleep around. They drink excessively. They even do shoplifting and vandalizing, because that means to say, oh, we are great. We are powerful. So many young people today, they follow the crowd simply in order to be accepted. And this is the real danger, because simulation of sin will ultimately lead us to sin. Because when we simulate sin, eventually, after some time, we will also partake of that sin. Even if we are not open, we are against it deep in our hearts. At the same time, by simulating sin, even if we don't really believe in what these people are doing, by so doing, we are actually denying God. Jesus in the gospel reminds us, he who rejects me, I will reject him when the time comes. And Jesus says the one who tries to save his life will lose it. And most of all, Jesus says if we are causing a scandal to the young people, young doesn't mean to say in terms of age, young in terms of faith. We are not conscious. We're not conscious, honestly, especially for those who are elders, those of us who are senior in age. We don't realize that actually the younger generation, people who are non-Catholics, they're looking at us, how we conduct ourselves, how we live our lives. Because when we do not conduct ourselves well, we give them the sign that, as many people would say, you see, all these Christians are hypocrites. They go to church, they pray, hallelujah, hallelujah. They say they love the Bible, the word of God, but look at their lives. So, and many people have lost faith because we are not living a consistency in what we believe and what we do. And so we put an obstacle. So it is important to realize this. That's why sometimes, as I've said, we are not conscious. We think that if we do something wrong, it is only we will be judged. We will be at fault. When we do something wrong, it's not one wrong, two wrongs. First, when you do something wrong, it's a sin. By causing others to sin, that is the second sin. So that is the reason why whatever we do in life, we have implications for others. When we are not conscious of our faith, when we don't support each other in our faith, when we don't pray together, when we don't see the importance of worshipping, oh, never mind lah, I absent, the rest, the other 30 are there. What for? One person absent, doesn't matter. Yes, at first one person absent. Then after that, another person say, oh, that fella, he's not there. I also don't go. And after that, in the end, everybody absent. Because we think that, oh, it doesn't matter, because one less, nobody knows. And so, that is the reason why today we are told in the gospel, we have Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was an exemplary example. He was a sinner. He was a tax collector. He was charging exorbitant tax. He was making money, and he was a senior tax collector. Finish. Senior some more. And then he was very wealthy. But his heart was not free. He was not happy. He was not himself. He knew that although he has so many things, he was not happy. He was searching for his identity, for his meaning in life. He was not happy. His life was empty. And so he heard that Jesus was coming by, and he was anxious to see him. Maybe he said, maybe Jesus can give me an opportunity to find myself, since he had heard so much about Jesus. And of course, we know that he was short, but he was, even though he was short, he was not afraid. If he joined the crowd would have killed him, because they don't like tax collectors. And he came, and then he mixed with the crowd, and then, of course, too short, you cannot see Jesus. He climbed on top of the tree. A very smart fellow, but he was resourceful. He was determined. In spite of all the opposition, this man was sincere. Yes, he knew that he was not living a righteous life. That's why he was not happy. And so he climbed up the tree, and to his surprise, Jesus saw him and said, come down, I must stay at your house today. And he was so happy. It will come down. And Jesus shows, therefore, that, when Jesus comes for the sinner, Jesus comes for us. It doesn't matter who we are. If we want to welcome him, Jesus is always there. It's a matter of whether we want to welcome Jesus or not. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 3. It says, if you open the door of your house, I will come and dine with you. And so Zacchaeus opened the door of his heart. And so Jesus went to dine with him. And of course, the people who say, oh, goodness me, how could this rabbi go to this sinner's house? And Zacchaeus stood his ground and said, I will give half my property to the poor. I cheated anyway, I will pay back 4 times the amount. This is more than the legal requirement. Actually, for the Jewish, if you have cheated someone, you pay the most twice the amount. He paid 4 times half the property given to the poor. He was a changed man. He was a changed man because now he lived a life of integrity. Because why? And because Jesus said, this man was lost. He is a son of Abraham. And truly, he reclaimed his sonship. To be a true son of Abraham, he was back home. And so today, let us, take encouragement from the Zacchaeus and Eleazar, both in different situations, trying to be faithful to their identity, faithful to their belief, their faith in God.